Good day everyone, welcome back to the vlog. It is currently 1 PM on a Tuesday afternoon here in Melbourne. I'm back in the Crown Casino car park, about to head into the poker room and grind a cash session. So far we have 103 hours of the 150 hours of our Aussie Millions 2020 challenge completed. So I have been keeping busy after busting the main event, grinding these cash games. Today, more of the same. I'm gonna head in, get a vlog out for you guys. So don't have too much time to waste, so let's hop right into it. G'day, so we have wrapped up the daytime session of 2-5 today, having to leave a little bit early for a bit of an emergency. Nothing too much to worry about for you guys though, but you will be happy to hear it was a super session. We ran crazy well, plenty of big pots to go over. So I'm gonna go take care of business right now, but then I'll get to the business of getting these hands out to you guys later. Peace. G'day everyone, it is currently a pretty gloomy Wednesday morning here in Melbourne. I'm back at Crown Casino, about to hop in and play another session of 2-5, but before we get to that grind, it's time to go over these hands we played yesterday. So without any further ado, let's hop straight into it. So first hand, a type passive player limps in the low jack. I'm in the hijack with pocket jacks. I raise it up to 20, and then I get a call from a tight aggressive button and then the limper calls as well. So we are 3 ways to a flop of Queen 7-4 with 2 spades. Low jack checks to me, and I actually just like to c-bet here. I make it 40, going for a bit of protection, trying to fold out overcards, but I think some worse hands can call, like flush draws or middle pair type hands. So I go ahead and make it 40, then the button folds and the low jack calls. So we go heads up to a turn, and the turn is a 2 of diamonds. Low jack checks to me, and I actually just decide to check it back here with my showdown value. I think if I bet again, I could maybe get called by a flush draw, but it's a bit thin, and my opponent, being type passive, they could definitely have a stronger hand, like a strong queen, or even a 2 pair or a set, they might just slow play. So I just check it back, and then we go to a river, and the river is the 8 of clubs. So the flush draw bricks, but then my opponent bets out. They go ahead and make it 55. The action's on me, and it's a pretty close spot actually. I don't think, like, it's a tight passive opponent, right? So I don't really expect them to be bluffing much, but obviously getting such a good price, I'm gonna get tempted and call with my pocket jacks. And then, much to my surprise, my opponent actually says, "You're good." So I just show my pocket jacks, no need to get her to show the bluff or anything like that. I just show my pocket jacks, and then she mucks her hand. So despite my read that I didn't think she was bluffing the river, she was bluffing the river, and I take it down with pocket jacks there. Next hand, I'm in the low jack with ace 10 of spades. I raise it up to 15, and I get no less than 4 callers. So we have 5 ways to a flop of ace jack 6 with 2 spades. The action checks to me, and I decide to throw in a c-bet for value here. Go ahead and make it 40, and then everyone folds except for a tight aggressive big blind. So we are heads up to a turn, and the turn is the 3 of clubs. When the big blind checks it to me, obviously this turn's a pretty big brick. Like, I think it's somewhat possible my opponent has ace 3 suited, but there is a bunch of worse aces in their range calling in the big blind. In addition, we can also bet to get called by flush draws as well. So I think it's a really good spot to continue barreling. I go ahead and bet 90, and then he calls. And we are heads up to a river. And the river's not a great one. It is the 9 of spades. So obviously if my opponent did have a flush draw or ace 9, they're now ahead of my ace 10, which is particularly noteworthy because my opponent actually leads out for 120. So obviously this is a bit of a smaller sizing on the bet, and we're getting good odds to call here, but I really don't like calling in this spot. I think it's very likely my opponent did river a flush, or they have a 2-pair type hand that they were slow playing on earlier streets. Now they're sort of doing a blocker bet with, but either way, I think it's very likely that I am behind here, so I just fold my ace 10 there. For this next hand, you might get a bit of deja vu because I have ace 10 of clubs yet again, this time in the +1 position. I raise it up to 15, then the action folds to a loose passive big blind. He goes ahead and 3-bets it to 45. This is another one of those I don't mind any 3 option spots in my opinion, but I think calling is probably the best option, getting such a good price to play a pot in position. So that's what I go ahead and do. I throw in the call and we are heads up to a flop of ace 9-3 rainbow with 1 club. The big blind keeps betting. He c-bets 50 into the pot. I think I have a pretty easy call here with my top pair and backdoor nut flush draw. Definitely think it's possible my opponent is betting worse hands like kings, queens, but obviously not going to raise because I can definitely have ace king, ace queen as well. So I throw in the call and then we end up seeing a turn. And the turn is the 6 of spades, bringing out backdoor spades. And then the big blind goes ahead and checks. Now this is a pretty interesting spot, I think, whether you want to bet or just check it back. I think the merit to betting is you can try and get value from those pocket kings, pocket queens type hands, but obviously playing it cautious and just checking can be a good idea. Particularly my opponent might be trying to play pot control with an ace king, ace queen type hand and just checking it themselves. So that's what I decided to do, play a bit cautious there and just check, but I don't mind betting either in this spot with ace 10, but I just check it back. And then we are heads up to a river still, and it is the ace of spades. So we do make trips on the river, which is pretty cool. Then the big blind's in the tank. He sort of starts counting out chips for about 30 seconds before sliding in a $160 bet. The action's on me here, and this is kind of concerning that he chose such a large sizing. He bet about the size of the pot. Obviously, I said on the turn, I still think my opponent can have ace king, ace queen in their range. Having said that though, we do block those hands pretty hard with the ace in our hand, and in addition to that, like this is one of the stronger hands we have here when we don't bet the turn. If you want to get into game theory stuff, definitely going to have to defend it, and I think it's a good spot to defend it regardless of that anyway. So I throw in the call, and then my opponent shows pocket 3s. So not only did he take an interesting line by 3-betting pocket 3s pre-flop, but he actually did check it on the turn as well, which I thought was interesting. But either way, obviously we're going to lose to the full house there, and GG to the opponent. Okay, so next hand I am in the low jack with pocket 4s. I go ahead and make it 15, and then the action folds to the cutoff, and a loose aggressive player goes ahead and makes it 50. Then the action folds to the big blind, and he cold calls. The big blind's like a tight aggressive international pro. He calls in the big blind. When the action's back on me, I think I'd be pretty tempted to fold to this 3-bet if there wasn't extra action in the pot, but because the big blind did call, I'm getting better odds to try and hit a set. So I do throw in the call, and we are 3 ways to a flop, and it is an absolute banger. It is 7-6-4 with 2 clubs. So obviously hit our set, that's always fun. The big blind checks, so I just decide to check it to the pre-flop aggressor. Then he goes ahead and bets 80, and then the big blind folds. So the action's on me. I think it's a good spot to check raise a set here. Obviously trying to maximize value if my opponent does have an overpair or something like a flush draw, nut flush draw type hand as well. Obviously want to try and get stacks in now before scare cards come on the turn. So I go ahead and rip it all in for 420. And then my opponent sort of like rolls his eyes before calling. Now I show my pocket 4s. My opponent shows ace 5 of clubs. So we have a classic flip. My opponent has a open-ended straight draw as well as a flush draw. Obviously I have 3 of a kind, so we are off to the races for a flip. Then the turn is the 10 of diamonds, so looking good so far. And then the river is the 5 of diamonds. Obviously a great run out for us. We hold with our set, and we're going to scoop in that pot. So running hot so far in the session. Okay, so next hand I am under the gun with ace queen of clubs. I go ahead and make it 15. Then the action gets to the same loose aggressive opponent in the hijack. He goes ahead and 3-bets it to 50. Then the action's back on me. And I decide to just call with the ace queen here. I definitely think there is some merit to 4-betting against a loose aggressive opponent, but obviously you can't go wrong with calling ace queen suited. So I call, we are heads up to a flop, and this is how good I'm running this session. We hit another banger. It is ace queen 9 rainbow, so we make top 2 pair. Obviously going to check it to the pre-flop aggressor, and he actually decides to check back. So I wasn't happy about that, but we do go heads up to a turn still. The turn is the 10 of spades, bringing out the backdoor flush draw. Obviously want to bet here, try and build a pot. I go ahead and make it 60. I will say I think I should be betting bigger than 60 here. I think it's very likely when my opponent checks the flop, he does have some sort of showdown value, and we can actually extract more value from those hands by betting a larger size. So I bet 60. I think I should bet something like 90 or 100. Regardless, I bet 60, and then he does call. So we are heads up to a river. The river is the 6 of diamonds. Action's on me. Obviously still going to try and get a bit of value here. I go ahead and bet 160, and then my opponent is in the tank for probably a good 30 seconds before throwing in the call. Then I show my ace queen and he mucks. So still running hot in this session. So running hot so far in the session. With the next hand, a tight aggressive regular from the 2-5 game. He's under the gun and he makes it 35 just straight away. And then there is a call from a low jack who I don't recognise. And then the tight passive player from earlier in the small blind calls. And the action's on me in the big blind. I look down, red pocket kings. Obviously somewhat concerned that my opponent did raise so large under the gun. Having said that though, not going anywhere with kings. I go ahead and raise to 200. Then the under the gun player is in the tank for probably about 20 seconds before folding. And then the low jack actually calls to 200, leaving himself about 300 behind. The small blind folds, so I'm heads up to the flop with the low jack, and the flop comes out queen 9-5 with 2 spades. The action's on me here, and I actually reckon this is a pretty interesting spot, whether I should just move all in for the 300 or check it to induce a bet from my opponent. I elect to move all in, and I think that actually might be a bit of a mistake. If my opponent does have a worse hand like ace queen or pocket jacks, he might just shove those hands himself to try and get me off of an ace king hand, so he'd just be moving in for protection basically. So I think that might be a better play, but obviously shoving can be good too. If we do want to bluff in this spot, we want to balance it with some value hands. Regardless, I rip it all in, and then my opponent's in the tank for probably about a minute before sighing, throwing in the call. I show my pocket kings, and then the board runs out with a 2 and an 8, and then my opponent mucks his hand, and the run good for the session continues still. By the way, my opponent later did say that he had pocket jacks, which, I mean, yeah, I believe that. Next hand, a tight passive player limps under the gun. Then the action gets to the same loose aggressive player that has already 3-bet me twice this session. He's in the low jack and he raises it up to 20. The action gets to me in the big blind. I have 9-8 of diamonds. I decide to just call. I think that's a slight mistake. I actually think 3-betting would be good here against a loose aggressive opponent's open, because they're probably going to be opening a bunch of trash hands that they'll have to fold, which is good for us obviously. But I do decide to just call, which is fine too. And then the under the gun player calls as well. So we go 3 ways to a flop, and the flop is a banger. 7 of diamonds, 6 of diamonds, 2 of hearts. So we flop an open-ended straight flush draw. I go ahead and check it, as does the under the gun player. And then the low jack, he c-bets 30. The action's back on me here, and I like any of my options here, to be honest. It's kind of hard to stuff this hand up when you flop so strong. But I decide to check raise, push my equity. If I get called by a 1-pair hand, I'm actually a favourite against that with so many outs. But also if I do fold out like an ace high type hand, that's fine too, because then I just win the pot with 9 high. I go ahead and make it 130. The under the gun player folds. And then the low jack calls. And then the turn is the 3 of hearts, putting out backdoor hearts. The action's on me. I definitely want to keep betting here. I actually think the correct play would just be to move all in here. My opponent only has 330 behind, but I make a slight mistake and down bet to 130. It's about half the size of the pot. Then my opponent calls. I don't like the decision to bet 130. I should just be ripping it in here with such a strong hand, but regardless, my opponent calls, and then we go to a river. The river's very helpful. It is the Queen of Diamonds, so we do make our flush. My opponent only has about 200 left in their stack, so I have a pretty easy decision to rip it all in. And then my opponent, he starts groaning, oh god, before calling. I show my hand, and then my opponent mucks. So obviously running very good this session, obviously running very good against this player in particular as well, and we take that pot down yet again. Alright, so those were the most interesting hands we played over the course of the session. Obviously ran very, very well. Ended up buying in for 700 and cashing out for 2,281. So obviously ran very, very well over this super session. In terms of the Aussie Millions 2020 challenge, we did end up playing 6 hours yesterday, bringing our total up to 109 hours. So very well on track to reach that 150 by the end of January. But now onto my favourite part of the vlog, the gameplay grade. And for this session, I'm going to give myself a B. Obviously I had really, really good results from the session, but that's not what I based the gameplay grade off. It's on how I played, and I did think I did make good bets in good places and some good faults as well, but I did stuff up some of the bet sizings, and even though I did run really well, I think I lost a bit of value by not betting more efficiently, so a B feels about right for the session. Alright, so that's going to wrap up the vlog for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to get the rest of the videos as they come out in January. Also follow me on Instagram @LeeBets. Thanks for so much for watching, guys. I'm out of here. Peace.